It's the Jarvcast coming at ya. Coming in hot. 1 year of Jarvcast. Can you believe it? Thanks for being here. Jarvcast at gmail.com. 1 year anniversary. Sitting here with Cronky Boy. If you hear and Willow, if you hear a couple dogs in the background. But another great month. Not for the Cardinals, of course. Worst team in baseball. One of the worst. They are in last place in the Central. National League Central. And it's kind of like when you drive by a car accident and you can't help yourself, you have to have a little look at it, a little look-see. And I can't stop watching the Cardinals. They're so bad, but I just can't turn it off. But there's a lot of good baseball besides the Cardinals going on still, so that's good. And football's coming next week. Done a couple of fantasy drafts. Got the big one coming up Sunday. And that's exciting. Have something to do on the weekends and on Thursday. I guess games are on Amazon Prime on Thursday nights, which is just like last year. So I'll have to borrow someone's Amazon Prime. That's what I do, but I trade off. Like, you could use my Major League Baseball. It's like $160 a year if I can use your Netflix, and you let me use your, HBO and work something out. But yeah, glad football's coming back. I even drafted a hockey and a basketball team too, so those are coming back too. Great time for sports. Just not for my team. It was even the Little League World Series. Just happened. California team won. But yeah, they were showing, since the team's so bad, and they'll just start having to talk about old times and this and that, and anytime they talk about like Rick Hummel or Bob Gibson or Mike Shannon or Lou Brock, it's like I always think like I've actually met all these people. Jack Buck. And I used to work at this restaurant where Jack Buck came in and he handed me $100 bill. I was just the busboy. And I said, "Oh, this must be for the waiter." And he said, "No, kid, that's for you. Never turn down a tip." I said, "Okay." And that made my week, at that age, that time. And at that restaurant was when I actually had a little set-down dinner with two Baseball Hall of Famers, Bob Gibson and Rick Hummel. And Rick Hummel just passed away recently. And story goes, I was in the hallway waiting for, we had a hallway close to each separate little dining area. And that's where all the workers would hang out and greet the customers as they came in. And Rick Hummel comes out of the room and he's like, "Where's the bathroom?" And he was just hammered. I said, I point him down the hallway, make a left past the mantle. And he's like, "The mantle? Just, can you walk me down the hallway and show me where?" So I walk him to the bathroom. And then when on his way back, I said something to the effect of like, "Wow, how cool is it that you're having dinner with Bob Gibson, the greatest Cardinal pitcher of all time?" And I started naming off some stats, and I told him that the first book I ever read, I did a book report on, and it was Bob Gibson, the story of Bob Gibson, and how he was a Harlem Globetrotter and all this, and Rick Hummel said, "Well, you got to come to the table and tell Bob Gibson that the first book you ever read was on his life." And I'm like, "Well, it's inappropriate to go to a table, especially with a celebrity, and start chatting with him." And but he demanded that I do it, and I came up to the table and I told him, and Bob Gibson says, "Now look at all this food on this table." And honestly, at Chemo's, it was over the top portions, and they ordered a bunch of apps. And I mean, he's like, "I'll never eat half of this." He's like, "Can you sit down and help me eat this? We'll talk some baseball." And I remember I said, "Well, I don't think I can. I'm gonna go ask my boss." And I went to Chili, my boss, who's the coolest guy ever. And I'm like, "Bob Gibson says he wants me to sit down and help him eat his dinner, talk baseball." And he said, "If Bob Gibson told you to sit down," and he sat down. And because the rumor was he wasn't the nicest guy to everybody. Like, he wouldn't sign autographs and this and that. Don't bother him because he's kind of a jerk, is what I was told. However, it was quite the opposite in my experience. And he was super nice, and we talked baseball. And I remember being correct about one thing, which was it was Matt Morris. So this was the 90s, and I was a Matt Morris fan. I'm like, "We're going to go to the playoffs. Matt Morris is going to win 20 games." And Bob Gibson's like laughing and shaking his head. He said, "He just doesn't have what it takes, kid. I'm sorry. That just isn't going to happen." And it did happen. And I remember leaving that night from work, and I went by my buddies and sat and told him, and he was just kind of like, "I don't believe you." It's like, I'm dead serious. I sat and talked baseball with Bob Gibson for like an hour tonight, and Rick Hummel. It was one of the coolest things I've ever did, for sure. But yeah, it was. It's when they show like goes to a rain delay, like it did the other day, and it was telling stories about all these guys, and it's like, wow. And we went from that golden era with like pool holes, and before that McGuire, how exciting that was, to what's going on today. It's just pathetic how the management and the ownership has allowed it to happen. And there's been so many times I'm like, why don't they sign this player? It's obvious that we need pitching, and they haven't done anything for years. They've made, I mean, picking up Goldschmidt was huge, but that was like 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. And Arenado's huge, a few years back, and so yeah, that's a good cornerstone to work around. But they really just made bad decisions all around. Like the lineup all year was a joke. They're moving Tommy Edman all over the field. He won a Gold Glove at shortstop. Keep him there. Then I mean, before Wynn came up, which was a couple weeks ago, but it was so strange that the day after the deadline, it seemed like they put the lineup together the way it should have been the entire season. It was like they were throwing DeYoung out there to try to trade him. Same with Montgomery and Flaherty and Wainwright now. Come on. It's and since the last Jarvcast, not a win from Wainwright. And they're saying on the in his last one, it's like, well, he'll have about four more starts. It's like to get those two, not a chance that he gets those two wins in the next four starts. And it's embarrassing that they keep throwing him out there, and he should be ashamed of himself for taking the mound. You have an 8 something ERA. Just give it up. I mean, that's got to be a record. There's never been there's I let me pull up today's starting pitchers that are starting today, and I'll try to find the highest ERA. 5.56 Lance Lynn is the highest in on Thursday, August 31st. So Wainwright, let's see when he's got an 8.10 ERA. He'll be starting Sunday. On that day of the starting pitchers announced, no one even close to an 8 ERA. I mean, there's a 5, but if you got a 5 or a 6 ERA, you probably need to go back to the minor leagues or find a new job. But 8 ERA, that's embarrassing. So, yeah, someone in management should say, you know what, maybe we should throw someone else out there to pitch. Anybody else, as a matter of fact. I mean, the Angels just dropped a bunch of players to dump payroll. Lucas Giolito's available. Lucas Giolito's a much better pitcher than an 8.10 ERA. I say sign him up. But enough going off about the terrible Cardinals. So I guess last month, August, we Nest did a few shows. We played Red Flag in St. Louis with Galactic Empire, the Star Wars tribute or cosplay band, which was really entertaining. Killer show for us. A lot of kids rocking out. You could tell it was their first metal show, because it's all ages thing. And really glad we did the show. And then we did Chicago and the Menominee, Wisconsin Zymergy Brewing Fest, Zymurder Fest, with a bunch of killer bands, and got to see a bunch of old friends I wasn't expecting to see. That's the cool thing about those fests. Like, I went and found the guy that put the show together, and so, where would you like us to set our merch up? And he goes, how about right here? And the guy right next to it was like this dude I've known for years. I'm like, well, this is going to be just fine. It's like, couldn't have been more perfect. Like, the guy from the band, he's actually sang guest vocals for Sexual Atrocities at Full Terror Assault a few years ago. But, yeah, had a cool few shows, and then from there I came back, was driving back down and stopped in Arkansas for Pantera with Flesh Hoarder opening, who was on the Jarvis booking roster years ago, and Lamb of God, of course, direct support to Pantera. Had a great time, and it was cool how early the fans came out to see Flesh Hoarder. Like, I mean, it was pretty much a sold out venue there at 7 p.m. rocking out the death metal. It was sick. And yeah, on my way there, I had all my gear, and like I said, we were coming back from the Nest show, and I was speeding and got pulled over. And what just happened, I was like, I wasn't in the fast lane, I was in the side lane, and going about 85 or 80, 85. And because I really wasn't paying attention, I was listening to Sade and like rocking out. And I look in my rear view, and there's a cop like right on my ass. He didn't have his lights on, but I was like, oh, I looked at my speed. I said, oh shit. So I kind of slowed down a little bit, but not too much. And but the problem was my exit was the next exit, and I'm like, ugh. I knew the second I turned my turn signal on, he was going to turn on his cherries, and he did. And so I pulled over right by on that exit, and the cop came on. He's real polite, and then the next thing you know, there's a second one on the right hand side, and he's like, "Well, I got you for speeding," and blah blah blah. And can you give me your driver's license? So I did, and I said, "You know what? Guilty as charged. You got me. No argument here. I wasn't paying attention. Kind of in a rush to get to this concert." And Gunrar's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, what concert?" And the guy looked like the guy on Reno 911 with the mustache and the sunglasses all the time, the short guy. He said I couldn't almost had to say something, but I couldn't say anything, of course. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm actually going to see Pantera tonight, and blah blah blah, and Pantera, you say? And I was like, yeah, it's at the Walmart amphitheater. Yeah, this was my exit to get down there. Like you can Google that and see, uh, and it all added up, and he came back and handed me my driver's license. Just said, had a good. He said, have a good night. He goes, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Have a good day. I usually work nights, and just no ticket, not even a warning. Just have a good day, and let me go. Which was great because in my merch box, my Nesty merch, I had 2.5 ounces of weed, so I was a little nervous. So I'm glad they didn't do the search, because then I also had so much gear back there. They're probably like, if we are going to search this fan, it's going to take hours. And so they let me go, and I made it to Pantera on time, and Mark from Scour was there to hang out. Got to go to like the meet and greet, and watch the show from the side of the stage, and it was kind of wild for a second. There was fucking out of nowhere, there's just some guy on stage getting choked the fuck out. Like, I mean, within seconds, I didn't even see the guy on stage. I don't even know how he got on stage, but it didn't take long before security had him in a choke, as they should, and they choked him the fuck out. I can't believe people don't know better. Like, you should obviously know better than to come anywhere near the stage for a million reasons. There's fucking flaming Pantera logos. Watch out. But yeah, come on. So I was glad to see the quick response by security to fuck that guy up. But yeah, another great Pantera show. It's they're getting. I mean, I've seen a few now, and it's like they get tighter, as most bands do, as the more they play. But they were adding like these endings, like outro, like rock star outros that most bands do, and but there's a couple of them. It's like, wait a minute, that's almost like a new riff or something. Like, what's going on there? But in a good way. Like, it's just like, wait a minute. So it's kind of cool, actually really cool, uh, to see them having fun, and like they said, like adding a little spin at the end of one of the couple of the songs I noticed. So having seen it a few times, it's a little different. Still, each time, like they've added different since the first show. They've added songs and mixed it up a little bit, and but before any of the shows, there's so much shit talking, and it's great now that since they've been playing, I haven't seen one person that went to any of these sold out shows say, you know what, that sucked. Not one bad. Everyone is kind of like, not shocked at how good it is, but just if you go, you kind of leave saying, "Holy shit, that lived up to the hype." And the songs can't be denied, of course. So yeah, that was sick. And then last weekend, King Parrot came to town. They came in, I guess, early Thursday morning into New Orleans. They were in San Francisco on Wednesday. And I picked them up from the airport, and I was there a little bit early. And of course, none of their gear shows up. And so they had to wait and fill out all these forms. So I had to wait and wait and wait. So the AC in my van wasn't working. And I was thinking, well, that's fine because it's 6:10 a.m. when I'm picking them up. By the time I get back, it's not going to be 100 degrees yet. Well, that's what I was thinking. Well, by the time I finally pick them up, it's like 7:30, and they're, oh, we need to stop at a Walmart. Well, by the time we get to the Walmart, it's like 8:39. Now they're at a Walmart for an hour. Now it's 10. Now it is 100 degrees. So I remember being like, geez, I wish I would have got my air conditioning fixed. But yeah, it's super hot. Record heat for the weekend. And then, of course, it's hurricane time. So in Florida, just yesterday, and today there's tropical storms touching down. And I think they went a little bit north than what they were expecting. But yeah, just more wild, crazy weather as usual. Yeah, next month is another another killer one. You know, got some Nest jams. We announced an October run, 8 shows in a row. Gonna do a little East Coast. Finally booked that October 11th I was talking about last month. Booked that we're doing Delaware because we've never done Delaware. And I've learned from this setlist.com website that has this cool, has a record of all of our shows and most of our set lists. And it has like a statistics area, and it has a concert map, and it'll show you like you haven't played Delaware and you haven't played the West Coast. So that's, I guess, my next plan. In November, I want to start booking some West Coast shows for Nest. Take Nest to the West. That's for the best. That's the plan. So hopefully I can book some November shows for Nest, and got some pretty cool stuff coming up next year. Can't talk about. Lots of cool stuff I can't talk about, of course, as usual. But maybe next month on the Jarvcast, as we enter year 2 of the Jarvcast. I was thinking about doing interviews. But who should I interview? It's got to be like big time, you know what I mean? Like A list. All right, I could do some B list or C list. All right, it'll probably just be me and my friends. But that's okay. That'll be fun. But yeah, I think I'd start doing some interviews and maybe start promoting the Jarvcast a little more. But I don't want to bother people. I'm always promoting the band and promoting this and that. So if you listen to the Jarvcast, cool. If not, that's cool too. But either way, I'll see you next month. Peace.